So I've been playing around with the visual settings in Shadows, and I made an initial video where I said the quality version was noticeably different than the performance version. I watched a couple of Digital Foundry videos, they're going to be in the description, and I have a more educated opinion on this. What it's going to boil down to, I'll keep it really short, is even though the quality mode does have a little bit more density in its just environment and things like that. You just kind of notice it's a little more plush. Even though quality mode has that, the smoothness of 60 frames per second actually, in my opinion, I think it makes the overall gameplay experience clearer and just a little more sharp. On the Pro specifically, like on the base PS5, what you're gonna see is different lighting techniques. I forget the intelligent terms behind it, but you're just not going to see the same level of lighting on the base PS5. On the Pro, when I'm looking at the shadows here and kind of how the lights kind of work and the sharpness of the shadows as they reflect right there, you're going to notice some differences in the quality versus the performance. But as I play through right now, and I've been toggling back and forth between quality and performance, uh, performance is looking really good. I cannot lie about that at all. I mean, I'd have to try to squint and look at shadow resolution in order to really find a difference. Now, I know if I went to water or looked at something that was reflecting the light in terms of ray tracing, you could see some differences as well, and it would add to the overall ambiance of stuff. But if you're watching right now, make a guess. Do you think this is quality mode or performance mode? Right? It is without a doubt on quality mode. Now, to be absolute, I'm sorry, performance mode. I apologize. It is without a doubt on performance mode right now. I turn these two settings off, and the biggest thing that you'll notice, I'll try to zoom in on the character so you can kind of see it. I'll try to get in the sunlight too so you can see it clear. The hair physics, right? The individual strand physics. When it's on performance, you're not going to see that individual strand flicker in the wind and during combat and stuff like that. So I guess you're basically, realistically speaking, you're kind of sacrificing three things by going into performance mode. The first thing you're going to sacrifice is hair physics. You're going to kind of see the hair moves, but the individual strands don't have their own direction. They don't have their own flow. The next thing you're going to notice in performance mode, a little bit less vegetation, but honestly, that's not that big of a deal. Maybe like shadow resolution as well, and some reflections off of the water. Here's a good area we can see some reflections. Now this is performance mode, and the reflections look pretty good right there. I mean, that does not look bad at all. Let's switch over to quality, and we'll compare and contrast. Now, the big thing about quality that's a negative in my experience is we're not even going to try balance because you can't record 4K footage in balance. But in my experience, balance looked just as good as either of the other two settings. So let's jump over to quality really quickly. The biggest thing with quality, when you get your frames capped at 30, when you're moving the camera around or you're just generally experiencing the game, it has a lagginess to it. And this lagginess, you're not going to be able to see it on your side as much as I can see it on mine. This lagginess really detracts from overall clarity because it's just, as I scroll, it's choppy. And being an action game, a combat game where you have to time your parries, much like first-person shooting games, the lagginess and choppiness can have a real detriment. Now, I feel as though it's a little more full and a little more dense in terms of the environment. I look at this reflection on the ground. Beautiful reflections on the ground in terms of how they mirror and shimmer and sheen and shine and reflect. It looks awesome. But ultimately, the choppiness of the overall experience compared to performance mode detracts more than these reflections at. Now, as I'm walking on the ground, you can clearly notice the reflections here are just way better than they were a moment ago when we were on performance. But you got to think about it. The amount of time you're going to really be noticing reflections and the sharpness of the shadows is less than the amount of time that you're going to be spending in combat, you know? Now, obviously, you can make it work at 30 frames. You just have to accommodate and compensate and whatnot. But in my early game impressions, kind of just navigating and moving around, the smoothness of 60 frames, in my opinion, makes it a better overall graphical presentation. Now, to circle back to the hair strand thing that I meant, or talked about a moment ago, if you look at her hair now and the way it moves, the individual strands kind of have their own weights, their own freedom to them. It's a very minute detail that you're not going to notice or care about, but it's one of those things that adds kind of like a bunch of layers of complexity and adds a bunch of minute details that get picked up. So, and you notice that subconsciously as you play through. There'll be moments you're just like, wow, this is gorgeous, and so on and so on, right? I mean, it looks really, really good. I don't know how YouTube compression is going to make it look on your end when you see this. I mean, look at this little stone thingy. Look at the grass at its base. You can see the individual strands. It looks really, really nice. Now let's jump back into performance. When you jump back into performance, the first thing that you really notice, the smoothness of the gameplay as the frames kind of just, I don't know, it feels, I don't know how to phrase it, it feels so much better with the smoother frame rate. It just does. What you're sacrificing is on the ground. Let's take the same pathway. What you're sacrificing is on the ground. You still see the reflections. They're still really good reflections. Look at that. That's awesome. It's just slightly less clear and slightly less sharp on those. Same thing with the shadows. I mean, I am having trouble noticing with my eye the difference in shadow pixelation, whatever. I'm a layman's when it comes. I'm a simple layman when it comes to that type of stuff. But strictly from a regular user gameplay experience, how pretty is the game? What's it look like? It looks fantastic on PlayStation 5 Pro performance mode. And I'm beginning to feel, after using the Pro for so long, that you're really only going to see the benefit of the Pro when you're in some type of performance mode. Playing at 30 frames may be okay to some, but to those of us that have been gaming our whole lives, once you make that jump to 60, it's really hard to go back to 30. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel as crisp. And look, you can see the reflections on the ground. They're not as like mirrory, as shimmery, but you don't notice that as much. Same thing with her hair. You don't really notice the individual strands kind of like doing their thing. Let me get in some sunlight. You don't really notice the individual strands kind of like having their own personality, their own freedom. It's kind of like one set thing on her head. It doesn't look bad. It looks fantastic. And it's just one of those minor details that can either add or detract what you see and feel subconsciously. Now, as we take that same pathway, it looks gorgeous, but there is like a noticeable layer of, a noticeable lack of just density, fleshness. I don't know the proper words for it, the proper phrasing for it. Let's go back to this particular signpost. Look at the grass on its ground right now. Right? Look at that grass. You can still see it. You can still see the individual grass blades or whatever, but I can't help but feel like there is a noticeable level of density decrease. There's just less things around. However, the smoothness you get from these frames, it's totally worth it in my opinion. On the base PS5 performance settings, you're not going to see this level of lighting. You're not going to, I don't think there's any ray tracing like this either. It's definitely not going to look as nice lighting wise as well. Check out the Digital Foundry videos for more details. So my new thoughts on this, I'll go ahead and I'll private the old videos so that way it doesn't confuse folks. Quality mode is nice, but it's too choppy. The smoothness you get from performance mode cannot be ignored, and I feel as though it adds a better presentation. Basically makes the presentation, the artistic graphical presentation better, because as you're panning the camera and moving it around, it just moves so much better, so much smoother. Like you can see the little individual, whatever the heck those are flying in the wind. You can see the same thing in quality. The density is a little higher in the foliage. The shadows might be a little sharper, and the reflections in the water look a little better. But to be absolutely brutally honest, unless you're looking for those things, you're not going to notice it. And if you start off in performance mode and don't switch back to quality, you're not going to notice it. And the most important, tangible, impactful thing, the frames in quality are so much choppier that I feel as though it detracts from the overall graphical presentation and therefore makes it look less good. It's almost ironic that quality mode would look less good simply because it's not as smooth when you're turning the camera or you're moving or whatever. So one more time, we'll jump back into quality. This is a really beautiful game overall, regardless of if you're on the Pro, regardless of which setting that you dive into, quality or performance, it looks very, very good. Now, jumping back into quality, let's walk the same pathway. Right off the bat, just the water on the ground. You can tell it is present from a further distance away. As you approach it, you can see the reflections. I mean, look how much clearer that looks. That's insane. You know, that you could almost read off of that. If there was words on the other side, you could make it out. That looks fantastic. But the problem is, when you're moving around, when you're fighting, the frames drop, and I think that takes away from the artistic presentation to the point where it actually looks less beautiful because it's not as smooth as you turn the camera. Now, if I go in slow motion, as I move the camera through slow motion, I feel like there's more stuff floating, there's more particles floating around. The vegetation feels so much more lush. I mean, it does look really, really good. Since the YouTube video you're going to see is going to be compressed and capped at 30 frames, y'all won't notice it as well. But let me look. It's just so much more lush. There's more stuff. It's just somewhere. There's a monkey here now. There wasn't a monkey here before. You know, there's Wukong right there. It's great. But the lack of smoothness in the frames cannot be understated. I do feel as though it takes away from the actual wow factor. But I mean, in quality, it just looks so gorgeous. If the frames don't bother you, go quality, because it is noticeable. But there will come a point in time, if you're a gamer like myself, where the 60 frames per second is going to be more valuable than more dense vegetation. It's going to be more valuable than these reflections on the ground, which look so stunning. Those look amazing. And it's going to be more valuable than the individual hair physics, which I did not notice until I watched the Digital Foundry video. But now that I have noticed, I can't take my eyes off of. Like, look at that hair just floating individually. The strands kind of like do their own thing, I guess. Looks great. It's such a lush environment on quality. It's really hard to overlook how dense and beautiful and reflective and specific it is. It just wow. So we'll do one more switch to performance. We'll try to stand in the same spot and look at the same specific area. Once again, balance is really, really dope. If you aren't recording in 4K like I am, if you have the TV for it, that HDMI 2 point whatever port, 120 hertz, whatever the setting is, balance was really good. 40 frames was noticeably nice. I mean, look, now we're in performance. The reflections are still noticeable. They're not as nice, but they're still very, very noticeable. I mean, it still looks really good. There's noticeably fewer particle effects, I think that's the phrase, in the air. There's still a decent amount. Vegetation isn't as lush. The flowers are not as abundant. But as we fight, as we dodge and dive, the smoothness of that, I think, presents itself better graphically than the choppiness of quality. So to me, my opinion has been reformed on this one. I think quality is great if you don't mind the frame loss, but the smoothness you get in performance cannot be understated. Performance on PS5 Pro is a lot, and I mean a lot, better than performance on the base PS5. Check the Digital Foundry videos for more specifics. And I think you can truly see as they phrased in the Digital Foundry video, a generational gap. That's the phrase, a generational gap in the performance mode versions of Shadows. So anyway, that's it. Sorry for the longer video. I appreciate anybody that tuned in, and good luck out there. And hope you have a good journey in this brand new Assassin's Creed game. I haven't gotten too deep into it, so I haven't formulated an opinion on whether it's good or not. But right off of the bat, I think it presents itself gorgeously as just a fantastic display of what next gen games should look like. Anyway, have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.